This will be a instructional video on how to install the GE 40,000 grain capacity water softener. I will also be installing a pre-softener sediment filter and a post-softener carbon filter. This is our incoming water supply. The main shutoff valve here is a 3/4 inch supply line going to a meter that runs 3/4 inch. At this point, the previous owner had installed a check valve because there was not a pressure regulator. But now that we have one, we no longer need this check valve. And if you notice, it goes from 3/4 inch to 1/2 inch, back to 3/4 inch, and then back to 1/2 inch. Since we're going to be redoing the plumbing, I'm going to run everything 3/4 inch all the way up to probably around here, where I'll plumb it back into a 1/2 inch connection. Before beginning this job, try to make sure that you have everything you need to complete the job. What I did was make a rough draft of how I think everything needs to be plumbed together, and then I went to my local hardware store with the supply list. Also, these are the filters that we'll be using for the pre-softener sediment filter and the post-softener charcoal filter. I was able to get these online. I chose these ones because they had the clear bases so that you can tell when the filter needs changed rather than just running off of a schedule of every 3 months. My house is currently copper, but I wanted to use PEX for this job because it's more flexible, it's a little bit less expensive, and hopefully it's easier to work with. I have my shark bite removal tool, my new PEX pipe cutting tool. I have the plumber's thread tape for any of my attachments that are threaded, and I bought a shark bite, actually probably 2 or 3 extra that I could think of for every scenario, because I would rather have more and return what I don't use than be halfway through a job like this where I'm shutting off water to the entire house and then realize that I'm missing a piece and have to stop everything and run to the hardware store. It's a nice little practice that I started several years ago that's turned out to be very beneficial. I also got these copper mounting brackets that I'm going to use to fasten the pipe to the cinder block wall so that it stays rigid and doesn't shift around or move. And because I want to be prepared for every circumstance, I have my propane fuel tank and torch, some 3/4 inch copper pipe with connectors, and I also have some, this is 1/2 inch, so I'm going to use it for the drain lines, some 1/2 inch PVC pipe with a bag full of random angle and slip fit connectors. When using PVC pipe, you have to use primer and cement on both pipes. That ensures a permanent fit that will never leak. Once you have all the materials that you think you'll need and a rough draft of how you think everything will fit, the next step will be to pre-fit everything that you can before cutting into the pipe. That way, again, this is another safety check. That way you should know before you get too far into a job whether or not you're missing pieces. I'm going to add a water pressure gauge since I have a pressure regulator. This way I can adjust and see exactly how far I've adjusted my water pressure. It's got 1/4 inch attachment, which I have to go from 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch, and then I had to go from had to screw that into my shark bite, and this will be my final connection at the very top. I'm going to take all my 3/4 plumbing, neck it down to 1/2 inch, and this will be my last connection before going into the main house line. all of these metal threads need thread tape on them. The next step in this process is to set up the water filter where it will finally go, and to connect all the fittings. I followed the manufacturer's instructions and put all these valves in place. And I went out on my own and I bought these 24-inch long, 1-inch threaded connection to 3/4-inch shark bite connection fittings. That'll give me a little more flexibility once I connect it to the plumbing, so that I can move it around a little bit if I have to. And also these overflow tubes here that came with the tank, there was only one. It was only 10 feet long. And the only problem with my setup is that I have to run from this corner all the way over to a drain on the other side of the furnace. So for now, I'm just running them on the floor, underneath a mat, underneath the furnace, and over to there. I wanted to run those drains up over the door frame and behind the furnace, but I learned that the overflow connection right here is a gravity fed connection. It does not have a pump, so it cannot run any higher than the exit. Otherwise it won't drain, and it'll defeat the purpose of the overflow. So now that that's in place, the next step is to pre-fit as much of our work as we can without cutting the pipe, and I'll show you that next. This is our pre-fit, pre-laid PEX 3/4-inch pipe with shark bite fittings that I'm going to use to replace most of this wall run. I didn't complete the bottom because that will depend on how everything turns out when I remove that check valve, make everything 3/4-inch, and move the water pressure regulator valve closer to the meter. But in this setup, you'll notice there's a main shutoff for everything that comes out of the pressure regulator valve. This is 3/4-inch to 1/2 inch, which will directly connect to our current hose bib connection that goes through the cinder block wall right there. This T here has its own shutoff. Will run to the pre-water softener sediment filter and then eventually go to the softener. And then it'll come back, go through the carbon filter and into this T, and that also has its own shutoff valve. And as a bypass measure, I can shut this one and this one off and open this one up, and I'll still have water to the house if I ever need to replace a water filter, or if there's ever a problem and I need to replace the water softener. I've started to move everything out of the way. There was a fastening point right here that held the 1/2 inch copper pipe rigidly against the wall. There used to be a water meter here. I've moved that up as high as I could. Ignore this dangling loose wire. This appears to have been for the original homeowner's doorbell for the basement. Just in case I ever want to use it, I'll probably end up taking this cable and just wrapping it around this box like so, just so it's there if I need it. But this box is here It's loose right now, so I can move it anywhere I need to. That box, you'll notice, is empty and actually houses the transmitting device for the water meter. The good thing is I have plenty of cord here, so I'll just pull out what I need to make it stretch up to here. When I'm done, I'll put that all back together. But I think we are as far as we can go without actually cutting the pipe right now. And before you cut any pipe in a home plumbing situation, it's very important that you remember to shut off the water main. So we're going to do that right now. That guy was leaking a little bit. Some of these older valves do tend to leak when they're not completely in an open or a closed position. It's nothing to be alarmed about. But just to be safe, that's why we added this extra whole house shut-off valve. It's a quarter turn valve. In the future we can use that one to shut off water to the entire house instead of using this one, unless of course we have to work on something in this area. Now that this is shut off, you have to relieve pressure and drain water from the home plumbing system. So I'm going to take the hose out, stretch it to my garage drain, open this hose bib connection, and then open this. Before you do this, it's important to know there will no longer be water to the house. So if you need to use the water for anything, use the commode, the shower, cooking, cleaning, if any of that stuff needs to be done, that should be done before you shut off the water. And prepare for this last portion of the job to last a couple of hours. So just make everyone in the house aware that the water will be off for an extended period of time. This could take a while. I don't want to film the entire draining process, so I'm going to stop right here. Okay, so I drained all the water out of the line by opening the hose bib and shutting off the water main. So now the next step is I'm going to put a little pot here to catch any remaining fluid that's in this portion of the pipe. I'm going to remove this ground fitting, and I'm going to use my pipe cutter to cut through this section of the pipe right here. I'll come back when that's complete. Okay, now that we have that cut, what we need to do now is we're going to take a propane torch and we're going to heat this section up right here, and we're going to try to separate this piece from this piece. We're going to try to save as much of this as we can. And once this is disconnected, then we can tap into this piece somewhere and we can plug in our pre-fit PEX water supply line. This is going to take a lot of heat. That's why we have the propane torch. Since this is going to be hot and we're going to need to pull it apart, we're going to use a pair of channel locks or vice grips or whatever pair of pliers you might have that'll work to try to pull that apart once it's hot. When it's hot enough, it should just come right apart. It shouldn't require a whole lot of effort. The biggest thing is just having the patience to heat it long enough until both pieces are hot enough for the flux to release and just have it pull apart. It took 2 or 3 minutes of close blue flame on the joint for that to work, but it did come loose. Actually, it looks like it came loose on the piece that I didn't want it to. But once I get this pipe section cut out, I can heat this up, remove that little joint piece, polish it up, and then reuse it with the shark bites. So our next step will be to line this up on the wall, see where I need to cut to join that in, and then we're going to cut this pipe here somewhere, clean off the ends, and we're going to plug that into our new piece right here. So when I come back, that portion of the job should be complete. We have the pipe cut where we believe is the right spot. You'll notice it's got paint all over it. That's just, we need to clean it up to make sure that when we insert it into the shark bite, we get a good solid connection and it doesn't leak. So we're going to take some plumber's sandpaper. We're going to polish probably about 1 inch of this off. Just enough to get the paint off, any burrs that might be on the ends here. Essentially just make this 1 inch of pipe look like it's brand new. I'll come back when that's done. Once this piece here is polished up like this and looks brand new, it actually took me 3 or 4 pieces of sandpaper to get it like that because there was a lot of paint and the paint was dulling the sandpaper. But I checked, it's polished all the way around. I also checked the tube to make sure that there were no nicks and scratches and the end wasn't rough, everything is smooth. And I took a napkin or paper towel, shop towel, and just kind of cleaned all the sanding dust off of there. Now we can just plug in our new fitting and take it from there. So we connected it, and you can see it went in almost the entire 1 inch, so that should be a pretty good grip right there. And if you come down, that's almost perfect right there. Once we straighten out all these bends and fasten this to the wall, I think that'll be perfect. And then we can focus on attaching that bottom piece into the hose bib. I now have the PEX tapped into my main line with both filters and the water softener attached. As much as I tried, I still ran into a little snag. I was unable to get this off of this, so I'm gonna have to run to the hardware store and get a replacement piece that I can screw onto my water meter. And the pressure reducing valve, I was unable to get this off no matter how hard I tried, and I didn't want to break the valve, so I'm gonna have to buy a new valve. I'm gonna get my remaining parts right now, and hopefully I'll have this project done in an hour or 2. I'll show you the running project once it's done. Thanks. Well, water softener is completely installed. I followed the instructions on the softener to charge it to start producing soft water. You can probably hear the drain in the background. It's doing the recharge process right now and purging the brine tank. I noticed after I ran it for a while there were a couple loose fittings that required some tightening, but nothing out of the ordinary. No shark bites in particular. More or less a threaded connection. This guy here is a little bit loose. It's leaking onto the filter above him. Nothing major, I'll just tighten that and nothing else is leaking that I can see. I had to solder the hose bib in, and that went pretty well. I had to solder this connection. I had a little piece here. When you do that, you have to make sure that this piece is cool enough to insert into here, because there are plastic components inside the shark bites. I was also missing, well, not really missing, but this piece here on my old application was something I couldn't remove. It was on so tight that if I would have removed it, I would have damaged it. So I went out and I got one of these from my local water utility. They actually gave that to me for free because it's part of the meter, apparently. And I went to my hardware store and I got a new 3/4 inch pressure regulator, and I cranked that all the way to the max. Its range is between 25 and 75 psi water pressure. If you look up here at my gauge, you can see I have a steady pressure of 75 psi. Now the job is pretty much complete, so I hope you have as much luck as I did, and thanks for tuning in. Bye.